Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today I have a build guide for you of my Burning Arrow Elementalist I made in solo self-found Affliction League. Now, this is a Burning Arrow build. It's not too flashy, and it costs me mana in my hideout, so I can't just spam it down. I'm just going to throw a map in here, show you what I have going on with this. I'm actually going to run two maps here because I have two different setups for this build. One using Snipe and one not using Snipe and instead using Swift Affliction. So this first map has Beyond in it and no life regen. No life regen is something this character can run. I have removed my steel skin from left click. I'm just going to hold that down on spacebar. And I removed my charms from Affliction League and even reworked the passive to cover the spell suppression I lost with this charm. But for clearing maps, this build is fantastic. It only has 3 arrows, but it has Ignite Proliferation, and it will tear maps apart, especially these more narrow maps, and Beyond will spawn into Ignite Prolif, so it is really easy to deal damage to them on spawn because there's already going to be damage in the area that they're spawning. So that is really nice with this build. Now I can get through this map really quickly. Oh, I even got a Harbinger in here. That's fun. That takes a little longer to deal with, but it gets me more Beyond kills in the process. And I can't just like plow through the map with that. Okay, there we go. And grab a shrine here. Just keep, like, if I see enemies, fire at the enemies, the ignites will go through. Here's a rogue Exile. Took a little bit longer to die. I didn't put any of my ramping stuff down on it. I have a flame wall that I can fire through for some extra damage there, and I have an Arcanist brand that is using Flame Surge and applying Elemental Weakness and Flammability. So I can really debuff enemies with my Arcanist brand, but for almost everything, I can just run through the map and shoot it. The Ignite will kill it, and it's really nice. Very smooth map clear. Really not much required to make this build get going. Definitely would recommend if you're looking for a more off-meta league starter. It could be a little bit harder to get a bow build up and going on an Elementalist because that is an int-based character and you don't have access to a lot of the bow stuff. First phase of the boss is done. And boss damage is not super spectacular, right? Because I am using Swift Affliction in this setup. It's making my damage much more consistent than it is when I use Snipe. And I can drop my stuff down on it. And even still, boss damage is not terrible. And finish up this map here real quick. And this is with Eater Influence and with Beyond. And all the extra monsters spawning really hasn't been an issue at all. Kind of just crushed this map. So now for the other setup, I'm going to put Snipe in instead of Swift Affliction. Now I can't use my Burning Arrow, I use the Snipe skill. You can tap fire at once and you get 1 charge of Snipe, or you can charge it up to 6 and launch it that way, and you ramp up way more damage. Actually, you can even quality Snipe up for an extra maximum stage, pushing it up to 7 stages. Each stage grants 80% more damage with ailments. So that makes my ignites way bigger. The difference though is that with 1 stack of Snipe, my damage is about half of what it was when I was using the Burning Arrow with Swift Affliction. So my initial damage when I'm just trying to fire at anything and everything as fast as I can, the damage isn't going to be as good, but for a single target, I'll be able to ramp it up really high. Another map here, this map has some speed, nothing crazy. Maps this build cannot run. Chance to avoid elemental ailments, that is a chance that your hit won't ignite an enemy. I currently am not able to run reflected maps, though there is a quick ascendancy change that could be done to really ramp the survivability of the build and allow for that. And cannot leech from monsters is a no-go as well, because I'm requiring leech to recover my mana and life. Wharf is also a pretty nice map to run with this, because everything is going to be in front of me, right? I can just fire, and even, like I said, that I drop my, like, map clear damage, just the quick blasts in half, it still is just going to cut through stuff. So a lot of people might want to run a style like this more than raising the damage and not being able to have a charged ability for single target. But even with that enemy, it's just not necessary a lot of the time. But for bossing, it absolutely is the better play. And if I come across a rare enemy that is fire and ignite resistant, I want to charge up a big snipe and get that off, or maybe on this guy, and then the ignite's going to go through the roof. I think up to around like 8-9 million DPS. I haven't looked at the POB in a while, but it is also linked in the video description. But we'll get to the end of this map and see the boss. And at the end of the video, I will run a Searing Exarch and see how fast I can delete that. It is actually very good at bosses. And I made this in solo self-found. So, like in a trade league, this can be made way better, I would bet. So here's the boss. Charge up. Fire it. And there's the boss's HP going down. That was without any of my stuff, right? I have the Flame Surge and all of that I can charge up and have that as well. And so I only fired 2 arrows into that boss and it is dead. So I'm going to start with the Ascendancy here before I go into the gear. I have this set up to cause my hits to always shock so that I can boost my single target damage even higher. And this could be easily replaced with Bastion of Elements, which is going to give you an Aegis that takes elemental damage before it comes from you, cannot take reflected elemental damage. So this is a really big defensive node you could take, but shock can just like boost your damage a little bit more. But the other 3 nodes are probably something you absolutely want on this build. Hits always ignite. All damage can ignite. More damage with ignites you inflict with hits for which the highest damage type is fire. Mastermind of Discord causes your exposure to apply an extra -25 to the affected resistance, and you regenerate 1% of mana per second if you've inflicted exposure recently. And then Heart of Destruction causes you to gain convergence when you hit a unique enemy, which will grant you a 30% more elemental damage bonus for 4 seconds, and that can only occur once every 8 seconds. But if you haven't hit a unique enemy recently, you have 60% increased area of effect, which really helps to scale ignite proliferation, making even my 3-arrow build able to really spread the ignites and clear maps really well. So looking at the gear here, the main piece of this is a heist bow base called a Solarine bow. This bow comes with an implicit flat fire damage. And then in crafting this bow, I used a Deafening Essence of Anger to craft flat fire damage onto it. And I kept using those until I hit another big flat elemental damage. And then I ended up exalting on the lightning damage later on. So a tri-elemental bow, but since all damage can ignite, all of this flat damage here is stacking into my ignite damage. And then I crafted some fire dot multi. Attack speed really isn't quite as necessary as it would be on a lot of other bow builds, because once my ignite is on the enemy, it is there. I have as much time as I want to get another ignite out, and I don't need to worry about rapidly hitting the enemy because there's a generation on the ignite. The crit chance here is cool. Chaos Res also pretty cool. But I would say the only other like guaranteed piece that you want to put in this build is probably a Replica Emberwake. This causes ignites you inflict to deal damage way faster, and you can scale that up even higher with Turbulent Catalysts. Not everybody likes this ring, though I really do, because this does lower the duration of ignites, that you put on enemies, but even with that, once you're scaling some extra ignite duration, I can get another ignite off pretty quickly before the ignite that I already applied wears off. So the damage potential I can get is way higher using the Replica Emberwake as long as I can apply that next ignite. But if you were to not use this, the ignite would last longer. Your damage per second would be lower, but the ignite would last longer, so the total damage the ignite would deal would be higher in that case. And then you can kill the boss slower, but you might only need to apply that one ignite. But I really like the Replica Emberwake here. All of my other gear is rare gear. My quiver is on a Primal Arrow quiver base for the increased elemental damage with attacks. I have flat lightning and flat fire. They're only T3 on this. Increased damage with bow skills, damage over time multiplier with attack skills. Not the most GG quiver, but it gets the job done. My other ring just has some life and resistances, elemental damage with attacks. It doesn't have flat damage to attacks on it, which it definitely could and probably would if I had access to Trade League. My amulet, I kind of bricked on the talisman. I was hoping for something better here, but this amulet has flat fire to attacks, all attributes, damage over time multiplier, not a ton of life. So this amulet's not super amazing, but I'm also getting some fire res and fire dot multi from Holy Fire on the passive tree. My chest piece has a bunch of life regen, some resistances, physical damage from hits taken as fire and lightning. I'm not built super heavily into physical damage. I'm built around evasion for this build. So getting physical damage taken from fire and lightning makes you take a lot less physical damage when you get hit, which is very nice. On my helmet, I also have Fizz taken as lightning, crafted on the implicit with flammability curse effect, physical damage taken as fire, crafted on it with life regen, and board resistances. Gloves have some attack speed, some life, some flat fizz to attacks. It'd be better to have flat elemental damage, but some strength there that's needed. With these gloves, I guarantee to inflict exposure for fire when I hit an enemy, some extra fire damage over time multiplier there as well. On the boots, I have a little bit of spell suppression, life, fire chaos res, movement speed, chance for onslaught on kill, and then +1 max fire res, and ignites you inflict deal damage 6% faster. The belt is nothing super crazy, though it does have a T1 elemental damage with attacks, has 2 decent resistances and strength. As crafted life, belt could be way better. And the jewel inside of it has flat fire and lightning to attacks, some life, and extra flat physical damage. So every bit of flat damage I can get on this build will scale my ignite damage up because I am an elementalist and I have Shaper of Flames. All damage can ignite, hits always ignite. I don't need ignite chance, and I need as much flat damage as possible so that that hit inflicts the biggest ignite possible. So the bow could be even better, right? If you use an essence, deafening essence, and then you use a fracturing orb, fracture that essence on there, and then you use another deafening essence of a cold or a lightning, and then keep rolling that until you hit the other T1 elemental damage, you could make a way better bow easily in a trade environment. And all of this gear just could be better. It is good enough to work. For my flasks, I have a movement speed flask with reduced effective curses on you, a granite flask for extra armor, a jade flask with extra evasion rating, and a quartz flask for extra movement speed. And the quartz flask makes sure I stay over 100% spell suppression and lets me run through enemies. And then my eternal life flask removes corrupting blood on me when I use it. Now for gem links, I'm using a Burning Arrow gem. This is really strong because it has 300% effectiveness of added damage. I originally made this build trying to build around Burning Arrow of Vigor that gives you flat fire damage equal to a percentage of your maximum life, and you really cannot get enough life to make this build better by using Burning Arrow of Vigor. You give up too much in stacking the life that you can just get way more flat elemental damage across things, where you're not stacking life and it gets tripled in effectiveness by using the normal Burning Arrow gem, that it wound up just being way better. Quality on Burning Arrow gives more damage with Ignite, so quality is very important for this skill gem. I also have linked Ignite Proliferation. This causes ignites that I inflict to spread to other enemies within a 2-meter radius, and increases my damage with Ignite as well. Without this build doesn't perform near as well, because I only have 3 arrows. I don't have a GMP or extra arrows in the build in any way. I rely on the Ignite Prolif to clear packs for me. I also have Cruelty. Since I have so much flat damage on this build, I am doing big hits with the arrows that I'm firing. So this increases the damage of those hits, but then also grants me Cruelty, which increases the damage from my damage over time. Unbound Ailments greatly increases the duration of ignites that I deal with supported skills and causes them to deal more damage. So this pretty much counters the reduced ignite duration on enemies from the replica Emberwake. Not 100% of that reduced ignite duration is covered here. An awakened unbound ailments could push it further, but I never got one of those. And then I have an awakened burning damage. This causes you to deal more burning damage, and this was the last awakened gem I got on the league, so I never got this leveled up to 5, so that could be improved as well. And then for the last gem slot, I'm using Snipe currently for my single target damage, but then I could swap in Swift Affliction or even an Awakened Swift Affliction. This lowers the duration of ignites, but like I mentioned, it deals the damage on the initial just tap fire that I think you would need a level 2 or level 3 Snipe to be able to replicate. So this is better just like tap fire damage, and Snipe is better single target damage when you ramp it all of the way up and get that 7-stack Snipe ignite off. So depending on the situation or the playstyle you're going with, either of those could work there. Now all of the rest of the gems are supplementary stuff. This build does just about everything with the Burning Arrow. In my helmet, I have Steel Skin linked with Life Tap, Flame Dash, and Flame Wall. All of those are linked to Life Tap, so they're not draining from my mana, making sure that I can fire my Burning Arrow. And since I'm relying on Mana Leech to recover my mana, I don't want skills dragging from my mana, causing me to be unable to fire the Burning Arrow. So having all of these skills linked to Life Tap causes them to just pull from that. The Flame Wall, the Flame Dash, and the Steel Skin. So all of those not going to drain my mana. In my chest, I have a Decoy Totem, also linked to Life Tap. I can put that down to draw enemy fire to it so that I can easily charge up a big snipe or make sure my ignite gets on the enemies and help keep me safe. Make sure I can get into a spot where I can fire through my flame wall for the extra damage. I have a cast on Death Portal. I have Mana Forged arrows linked with Frenzy. So you can see right when I fired my Burning Arrow, every other time I'm also going to fire Frenzy, and it will target an enemy, and that's how I'm generating Frenzy charges. That just happens automatically as I spend mana with my Burning Arrow. My gloves, I have Precision linked to Arrogance, causing Precision to be reserved on my life, keeping this mana pool open. And also here is Malevolence, which increases my damage over time, and Grace for defense. Then in my boots is where I have the Arcanist brand linked with Flammability, Elemental Weakness, and Flame Surge of Combusting. This strikes enemies with a Surge of Flame. If this ignites an enemy, a large area of burning ground will be created under them. Your damage modifiers don't apply to that burning ground. So this burning ground is affected by the ignite on the Flame Surge, and that scales up with quality, increasing the damage from the inflicted ignite. Now, it's not factoring in the ignite of my Burning Arrow, it is the ignite from the Flame Surge. Alternatively, an Alchemist mark could be used, which does the same thing. It creates burning ground based on the ignite on the enemy, but this would create burning ground based on the ignite that I inflict on the enemy. But since I'm already using 2 curses, Inflammability and Elemental Weakness, Flame Surge just seemed to work better for me in this case. And that pretty much covers the build. Like, all of it's in the Burning Arrow. There's things I can put down to put the damage higher. I can swap Snipe in. All good stuff. My Pantheon, I have Soul of Brine King maxed out for the freeze immunity. And I have Soul of Rislata giving me extra life regen. And enemies I've hit recently have reduced life regeneration rate, which is really nice, so they can't counter my ignites as much. Now, I already covered the Ascendancy, so let's look at the passive tree. Now, like I mentioned, a witch is not really set up to just dive into using Burning Arrow, because my first 5-6 points on the tree are just pathing out of the witch start up to Searing Heat, which causes my ignites to deal damage faster by getting that. And there is a video of how I leveled this character from last league if you want to see how I got it to in-game. Pushing over to the left, I come and get Cool Preparation. There's some all-res there. I get the 50 flat life and grab Breath of Flames, which is damage over time multiplier. Increased ignite duration on enemies is good. This further helps counter the downside on the Replica Emberwake, and ignites you inflict deal damage faster, further lessens the duration, but it raises the DPS during that duration, so increasing the duration further scales the damage, essentially. An extra fire damage there. My Anoint is grabbing Holy Fire over here, because I can't really path over to it, and I'm not grabbing Elemental Overload, though I could have worked that in. I like to run shrines in my maps, so getting the crit shrine and being able to inflict bigger ignites because I'm doing extra damage is pretty cool, even though I'm not spec'd into crits. Moving along the top of the tree, I grab Whispers of Doom. This allows me to inflict both Elemental Weakness and Flammability with the Arcanist brand. I really only need it for crazy single targets, so the Arcanist brand is fine for me to be able to get those curses out. Path through Written in Blood, grab the extra strength there, get some life, and then push into Snowforged. Enemies ignited or chilled by you have -5 to elemental resistances, further lowering enemy resistances. There's even a mastery here for anything else you might need. When critical strikes afflict you, can't inflict ailments. Chance to treat monster res as inverted, though I'm lowering resistances. Exposure, inflicting at least -18 to resistance, doesn't help me because even though my gloves are only -11 exposure, my Ascendancy is adding another -25 to that exposure, so I'm already inflicting over 18 exposure. There's reduced effective exposure on you if you wanted it. Some things there, but I wound up not needing anything. I grabbed Growth and Decay. I even went through the life regeneration side of this for extra defense, though there is more damage over time multiplier on the bottom route for multiple points. But then I get increased skill effect duration and increased duration of ailments on enemies with the mastery. Pushing down into the Shadow Start, Cold-Hearted Calculation, as some damage, mana regen, and I reworked 2 points to be able to grab myself Resourcefulness, which is spell suppression and life, and getting this life per enemy killed, energy shield per enemy killed is also really nice to have. Elemental Focus increases duration of elemental ailments on enemies, as well as increasing elemental damage, so this also is a very nice node for an Ignite build. Extra damage and Trickery, Life, and Blood Siphon with more strength. This build is very strapped for strength, because I got a lot of it on my gloves, a lot of it on my belt, and if I were to remove my belt, like I'm 28 strength short, so I need that strength there. Coordination is some attack speed, but also some dex and int. My int is actually higher than my dexterity. Then I also push down to Charisma for the mana reservation efficiency. I didn't go too crazy into the mana reservation efficiency. Then I also have a Watcher's Eye here, which is nothing crazy either. I'm getting increased movement speed while affected by Grace with this. You can get ailments deal damage faster with Malevolence as something you could have on there, which I do have one of those actually that I ended up getting. Or damage over time multiplier while affected by Malevolence would be good as well. But the extra movement speed is helpful. Revenge of the Hunted is giving me spell suppression, life evasion rating, and the mastery here from the evasion node is giving me extra spell suppression if helmet, body armor, gloves, and boots have evasion rating, which they do. Evasion on the helmet, gloves, boots, and chest. So I actually need that extra 15% spell suppression. Then keep pushing over to the right. Going up, I grab Clever Thief. This is where I get attack damage, leeches, life, and mana, and how I'm able to run no region maps because I have this leech on this Clever Thief node. Then I also grab Blood Drinker for the life and a mastery that causes skills to cost a bit of life instead of 30% of their mana cost to further make my mana more usable. And I have the big life regen on my chest and my helmets. So my life recovery is pretty solid, and I also grabbed this life regen up here, but I also have the life leech as well, so I'm able to recover the life I'm spending really easily. Then down into the bow stuff on the right side of the ranger tree, I grab multi-shot for the additional arrow. This takes me to 2. Without this, I would just shoot less arrows. I'm also grabbing a mastery here so that monsters cannot block your attacks, so that I'm always able to hit them and deal the ignite damage. Getting Inveterate for extra spell suppression that I needed. And these pierce nodes in piercing shots are also very important. Now, if I did not have Pierce worked into the build, I would fire my burning arrows and they'd hit the first enemies and then they'd stop. And then those enemies could die and then they could spread their ignites and whatnot. But having these 3 additional pierces lets the burning arrow inflict ignites on 4 different enemies when I fire it. And then all of those enemies can prolift their ignites, and that's how I have such good pack clear with only the 3 arrows. The 3rd arrow is coming from Master Fletcher. It's also extra attack speed to get to that. Now, if you didn't want to worry about the attack speed stuff to get these, you could use the Cirrus Jewel with the ring on it to hit both of the additional arrows with a Thread of Hope. That could save a lot of points, but I didn't have one of those when I built this. So the jewel I have here has fire damage over time multiplier and life. Reduced effective shock on you. Nothing super special there either. Then I have attack speed, global accuracy rating with acuity. Dex's accuracy bonus instead grants +3 to accuracy per dex. I need that accuracy so that I actually hit the target. I can't put the ignite on them if I don't hit them. So that's why I'm running precision and why I'm getting some accuracy here. And then I grab herbalism, more life there. Another mastery says you count as on full life while at 90% of maximum life or above. Since I am reserving my precision on my life, I cannot get the spell suppression while on full life from Revenge of the Hunted. And taking this mastery, I count as on full life, so I get that spell suppression as long as I am up there above 4,500 life, roughly. I get more spell suppression with intuition, as well as quick step for extra movement speed. There's attack speed, accuracy, and finesse. Life regen if you used a flask recently, or life flask, chance to avoid being stunned. And then ballistics gives projectile damage and dexterity, and I need that dexterity for my build. I'm actually strapped that tight on attributes as well. Now, to work in resourcefulness, I pulled 2 points out of one with nature. This is elemental damage with attack skills, which would scale the ignites with some all-res there. But you could also slap some points into Aspect of the Eagle, increased accuracy, damage over time with bow skills, and whatnot. So there's sources of extra damage. There's also Primeval Force down here for some extra elemental damage if you really started to strip some of those other skills, like with the Thread of Hope dropping all of this attack speed. But that is pretty much the build. It should be clear that there's a lot of room that this build could be pushed further, as I built this in SSF. So I think this could easily be a solid league starter You really just need to get a hold of a bow base and farm some deafening essences. And I crafted this bow myself. I hit the essence and it gave me the T2 flat cold damage on it. And then I hit the flat lightning with an Exalt. Not max rolled, not super amazing. And I could have more flat damage all over the place. Only T3 rolls on my quiver, a T2 roll on my amulet, and there could be multiple flat damage rolls there as well as on the other ring. Get a corrupted 6-socket abyssal jewel that could be extra damage there as well. You could even do something like put on a Huri's Ire for this build, which adds a bunch of flat cold damage with bow attacks. That, by playing an Elementalist, all damage can ignite, will raise your ignite damage, as well as a Blizzard Crown instead of the helmet that I'm using here. You could get that extra flat cold damage. It also raises enemy cold resistance, but the cold resistance doesn't matter because you're doing all your damage with ignites. So that factors in fire resistance. So you could stack lots of extra damage elsewhere to really ramp this build further. Now let me craft up this Eater of Worlds. Crits action speed cannot be lowered. Sure, I can do that. I got spell suppression. I have a decent chunk of life. This shouldn't be hard for single target. I want my snipe in. And let's see how quickly I can destroy this. Okay, here we go. I'm going to drop the decoy totem, put down this, ramp up to 7, hit the ignite, and then get the alchemist's mark down. And then we'll get another one going. And this eater is just draining. I need to get another one off because it's going to wear off if I don't. Keep applying the ignite. But I think that's pretty solid damage. I was very happy with it playing in SSF. It was one of my best boss killers that I made on the league. So, highly recommend if you're looking for something to play that not many people are going to probably jump to on a league start. Over halfway, I need to reapply the curses. And move. And charge up another big snipe. There we go. Just the HP just goes. I'd actually really be curious to see what this looks like with min-maxed gear. Like, I bet this is actually pretty insane. But that is going to do it for this guide. Again, the POB is in the video description if you want to look at it for yourself. But that's going to do it for this one. I'd like to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the like button as it really helps the channel out a lot. Subscribe to make sure you don't miss more videos from me. If you'd like to help support my channel, please consider using the super thanks, the heart icon just below the video, or by joining to become a member. And I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.